I'm going to ask you to turn your Bibles, if you will, to Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9. I searched for a verse because when I talk about parenting teenagers, and this is what we're talking about, bringing our faith to work in our home. When I talk about parenting teenagers, I look for a verse that what could really nail this thing? And I found Galatians 6 and verse 9, and I thought, well, this is it. So let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. Translate, don't give up. Don't give up. Parents whose children turn the big 1-3 face a whole new world, don't they? Suddenly, the choppy waters of the younger years and even the tween years become full-fledged Class 4 whitewater rapids sometimes. And sadly, many parents, when they reach that point in time, just give in to go along. Because frankly, we don't want the hassles. We don't want our child to be mad at us. We certainly would not want our child to be, deprived of something that every other teenager on the planet, according to them, apparently has. But there's a definite cultural change that occurs in the way that today's parents parent teens. We have become the parenting generation of hear no evil, see no evil, I don't want to know. And why is that? Simple. It's easier that way. And I'm not sure when this societal transfer of authority happened, from parents to kids. But in many families, and I dare say sometimes families who are Christians, in many families, what the kids think and what the kids want and what the kids like is more important than what the parents think, what the parents want, and what the parents like. And so the mantra of parenting in this culture has become, well, just let the children decide. Let the kids decide. And guess what's happened? That doesn't work very well. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a culture. We live in a culture of disrespect. And I doubt that I even have to tell you that. You know that. And if you don't believe that, let me tell you what to do. If you don't believe that, go be a substitute teacher in a middle school. And tell me how that's going to work for you. We live in a time in which parents have suffered this kind of role confusion. We know we're supposed to have some kind of authority, parental authority given to us by God. We know we're supposed to have that. We know we're supposed to exercise that, but we don't exactly know what to do with it. One study reached this one-sentence conclusion, this official study. The attitude of American teenagers today toward their parents can be described as ingratitude seasoned with contempt. Do we need a study to tell us that? You go to the mall, you go to the airport, you go places of public, and you see that all of the time. For most of human history, for most all of it, kids have learned culture from the grown-ups in their lives. But in this little slice of history, something has changed, and something has got all out of whack. Because American kids today have their own culture, and it has become the culture of disrespect. I saw a teenager the other day that had a t-shirt. It simply said, "Do I look like I care?" That speaks volumes. Another one said, "I don't need you, I have Wi-Fi." And that speaks volumes too. And it's not just cultural disrespect toward adults, it is a cultural disrespect toward anyone. This is the world in which we are a part. This is the world in which we live. And it's not easy as a dad and it's not easy as a mom to raise up our kids to first of all have respect for God, much less anybody else. So what is this culture of disrespect? What does it mean to you and what does it mean to me as a parent? Or maybe tonight you're a grandparent. Maybe that's where you're coming from in this lesson. What does all of this mean? How can I as a parent assert my God duties as a parent when sometimes I feel like I'm out here on some kind of deserted parental island of some kind? And I don't feel like I'm getting a lot of support and a lot of encouragement. So what does it all mean? Well, I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. Let's start there. I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that you go to the other extreme and suddenly become the drill sergeant disciplinarian. That's not what that means. The Navy man with the foghorn that simply tells his kids, now hear this kind of thing. Truthfully, the more that parents yell on a continual basis, the more our kids just tune us out. Now, there's going to be times as we raise our children that we're going to raise our voices. We've all done that, and there's sometimes that you just have to do that to get their attention and to help them understand some things. But if you do that all of the time, if that's all our children grow up hearing, then they tend to tune us out. So it doesn't mean that. I'll tell you what it does mean. It means that as a parent today in the 21st century, you have to ensure that the parent-child relationship takes precedent over the teenage peer relationships. Because when you as a parent lose the respect that God has given you with your authority, and your teenagers have their same age peers and the respect they have for them is more important than the respect they have for you, the result's not going to be very good. And so as a parent, what I have to do, my responsibility is to make sure that my relationship with them matters more than the relationship they have with their peers. And I have to do everything I can to keep that respect. And in this culture of disrespect, it is not easy. We're seeing an entire generation of immature teenagers being raised not by their parents, but by other immature teenagers. Now, you can argue that's been going on for generations. And you could argue that successfully and you can argue that correctly. But ladies and gentlemen, because of technology and because of instant messaging and because of social media, it has never gone on to the extent that it is now. One child psychologist, he calls this girl Cynthia. He says, Cynthia was rude and hostile to her parents while remaining very happy and charming to her friends. She obsessed about her privacy and insisted her life was actually none of her parents' business. The result? Her parents were not allowed to speak with her without being made to feel intrusive into her life. In fact, they found it impossible to sustain any conversation with their previously loving daughter. That's a common scenario. It is a common scenario. And I will tell you that today's parents, by and large and generally speaking, today's parents are tired. They are tired of getting beat on. They are tired of getting beat up. They are tired of getting beat down. They're just tired. They're tired of feeling that I'm alone in this family situation and circumstance. Oh, we come to church, we dress up and we look the part and we look good and all of that kind of thing. But in reality, when we go home, it's a different story. And sometimes we feel like our families are spinning out of control. What do? We're tired of worrying about what are other people going to think about us. We're tired of feeling like a failure in our family? So what are we going to do as moms and dads in the times in which we live? What are we going to do? Well, we can throw in the towel, and some people do that. We can throw up our hands and just say, I give up, and some people do that. Or maybe we can try a new approach that's not new at all. Maybe we can try the approach that says, I'm going to go back to the book and I'm going to find the principles of Scripture because I've tried some other things and they're not working well. So I'm going to go back to the book and I'm going to find these principles of Scripture. And I think I'm going to start applying some things. But please understand, it's not easy today. In the best of circumstances, it's not easy today. Because given leadership, ladies and gentlemen, is not easy on any level. And I dare say, given our time and given our culture today, the leadership of the home is the hardest leadership of all. And you're not going to get any encouragement from culture. You're not going to get any encouragement sometimes from many other families. So I want to leave you tonight with 7 things. I'm always giving you stuff to write down. So write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? I want to leave you tonight with 7 things to consider, to think about, in order to be able to survive the teenage years and help our children find their own faith and get them through this turbulent time. 7 things to consider. By the way, there's a lot more than 7, but you got to start somewhere. Number 1, write this down. As a parent, I have to figure out my parental motivation. I have to figure out my parental motivation. I have to figure out what is it I'm trying to do. What do I want to accomplish? And where am I coming from in order to do that? Now, too many parents in our time have already decided that their motivation is, I've got to please my child. And so that becomes the whole platform for their parenting, because the last thing a lot of parents want, I can't stand it when my kid gets mad at me. And so that becomes their platform for parenting. And I will tell you, if your relationship with your child is governed by your great desire to be loved by him or her, the odds are going to be really, really high that you're not going to achieve that objective. Because I think there's something hardwired into us by our Creator that your child expects to look up to you. Your child expects to be parented by you. Your child expects to have a parent who understands what authority is all about. And when you and I refuse to stand as that kind of God parent, then why would we be surprised when our home relationships get all out of whack? If you day after day after day put the wishes of your child first, or you cave, or you keep giving in, or you keep bailing them out, I will tell you what you will earn, and it will not be what you think you will earn. You will earn something, but you will earn their contempt, and you will not earn their love. But on the other hand, if you go back to the principles of Scripture and assume the God-directed parent duties, and what are they, by the way? Well, it's helping to teach our kids right from wrong. It's teaching them to be respectful and responsible and easy to be around. It's holding them accountable. It's communicating clearly the expectations that you have of them in the home. It's embracing and helping to enforce the consequences and embrace them when it happens. Read the first 7 chapters of Proverbs. As you go back to the first 7 chapters of Proverbs, it's all about a parent who sits down with his children and who says, listen here, my son. Listen to my instruction. Give ear to my words. And the first 7 chapters of Proverbs is all about this. And if you do these things over time, in many cases you find that as bumpy and rough as the teenage years can be, our kids grow up and respect the fact that we love them enough to parent them from a position that God has put us in. Too many parents live in fear. They're afraid that their kids won't like them. And I have two things to say about that. Number one, you're right. Your kids are not always going to like you. But number two, and most importantly of all, they'll get over it. They'll get over it. And one day you'll get a phone call, like I've had a few times. The phone will ring and my daughter will say, Dad, I was in the store and this happened or that happened, and this is what I did and this is what I said, and then suddenly I realized, I'm you. Well, maybe that's not such a bad thing. I don't know. Some of you have received those calls. What goes around comes around sometimes. Galatians 6 and verse 9. Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. Don't grow weary. But the first thing you have to do is decide, where is your parental platform? What's your motivation as a parent? Where are you coming from, above all? Secondly, teach your kids how to treat you. Teach your kids how to treat you. Some children grow up and they disrespect their parents because the parents somewhere along the line allowed themselves to be disrespected. If you don't respect yourself, then who will? Your teenagers won't. They won't respect you if you don't respect yourself. We teach people how to treat us. We actually do. We teach people how to treat us on many, many different levels. I was reading in Dr. Leonard Sax's book, The Collapse of Parenting, and I pulled out 2 or 3 paragraphs. He is a pediatrician with over 30 years of experience and also a pediatric psychologist. So he's eminently qualified. And in his book, The Collapse of Parenting, he says this. I was waiting at the gate in Terminal A at the Philadelphia International Airport, and I watched an American family, a mother, father, teenage daughter, and 2 young sons, and this is what happened. Where are my donuts? One of the boys asked. He was probably about 8 years old. Sweetie, I thought we would save those donuts for the plane, his mom said. Where are my donuts? I want them now, he said very loudly. Honey, you just had dessert. Let's wait till we get... I want them now, he shouted at the top of his lungs. His mom looked guiltily around as if the TSA might come and arrest her. Without another word, I watched as she fished into her bag and handed over the entire box of donuts. The voice of the gate attendant came over the public address system. In a few minutes, we will begin boarding U.S. Airways Flight 728 to London. We board by zones, da-da-da-da-da. The teenage daughter was texting on her cell phone. Trish, it's time to put your cell phone away. We need to get ready to board the plane, the mom said. Her daughter ignored her. Trish, Mom, would you shut up? Can't you see that I am busy? Trish, we need to get ready to board the plane. The plane. The mom's words sounded like a bunch of questions. Her daughter continued to ignore her, and that's when the mom glanced at me. And I kind of felt a little uneasy and walked away. I could sense the mom's discomfort, and I was uncomfortable too, but the kids were in their element. They were living in a different culture. Mom had not encultured her kids into her own culture. Instead, she was trying to adapt to theirs, the culture of disrespect, which they had learned from their peers. And while these kids might have been enjoying themselves at the moment, after a fashion, eating the donuts and texting, Their parents' failure to enculture and instruct them rightly means that these kids will be ill-equipped to withstand the challenges of later adolescence and adulthood. And then he ends by saying this, you know, sometimes you have to wait before you eat the donuts. And sometimes you don't get to eat the donuts at all. Welcome to life. You ever seen something like that? I'm guessing you have seen something very similar to that. You've seen that in the grocery store. You've seen that in different public places where the kids are just out of control and it's like mom and dad just don't know what to do. Listen, we teach people how to treat us. You have to understand that. We do. Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap. But don't grow weary. Don't give up. Third, allow your child to survive their drama. Allow your child to survive their drama. Don't be the helicopter parent. The helicopter parent is the parent who swoops down every time a child forgets something or every time a child makes a bad decision. Now, I qualify that by saying I'm not talking about something illegal, and I'm not talking about something that is unsafe even for them or for the family. That's not what I'm talking about. How are our children ever going to grow up and learn responsibility if you and I, as their parent, are always swooping down and rescuing them? They forgot their permission slip. They forgot their homework. Oh, they didn't bring the right shoes for gym. They forgot their chapstick. That's a big deal in our family right now. Chapstick, of all things. I take this girl to school every morning, and I mean, if she doesn't have her chapstick, it's, oh, Dad, we've got to stop at the store. I got to have chapstick. I said, you'll live. You'll live. And so for Christmas, for her Christmas stocking, it was full of you-know-what, chapstick. I went to Walmart and bought all this chapstick. I mean, it was just full of nothing but chapstick. There you go. But you will be amazed at how many parents are helicopter parents who swoop down every day and rescue their children. And you know where you find them? In the office at school, in the office of the elementary school, in the office of the middle school, in the office of the high school, bringing all of the things their wonderful children have left behind because, they've got to have these things. And then there's the Black Hawk attack helicopter parents. These are the parents who are absolutely obsessed that I have to create for my child the perfect life. I don't want my child to ever face any discomfort. I don't want them to ever face any disappointment or struggles or certainly not any inconvenience. And so these parents are almost on attack mode to everybody. And they drop smart bombs on anyone who gets in their way. Any person, any school, any teacher, any coach, any employer, any even college administrator who would dare to throw a flag at the misbehavior of their child or even possibly remotely suggest that it's the child's fault or the child is lazy. Here's an idea. Instead of teaching our children to grow up and go blame everybody else, instead of constantly rescuing them from all of their drama, here's a question you could ask. The next time your teenager is faced with a dramatic moment, ask them this question: what do you think you should do about this? It might blow their mind. How do you think you might be able to handle this a little better the next time? What are we doing? We're helping our children learn to think for themselves. We're helping our children learn to find the solution. Not to escape it, but to find a way through it, to learn from it. If we don't allow our teenagers to grow up and survive their own self-inflicted drama, how are they ever going to make it in the real world? And yet I will tell you, it is exhausting. Sometimes it's just easier to swoop down and fix something and okay, it's done. It's exhausting sometimes. But you can't lose heart in doing good. For in due time we will reap if we don't grow weary. Number 4, you have to be okay even if your child isn't okay. I think this may be the most important of all. You have to be okay even if your child is not okay. You and I can raise our children and we can go through all of these years and we can worry, and we can wring our hands until there's nothing left. Or we can simply say, you know, I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm going to learn and I'm going to study and read and I'm going to sharpen my parenting skills. And yes, I made mistakes and I'm going to learn from them instead of keep repeating them. But I'm determined I'm just going to keep on keeping on. That's one of the messages of Deuteronomy 6 that we talked about last night. That's Ephesians 6 and verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. You do the best you can. And if you do the best you can, and you follow some biblical principles and guidelines, and your teenagers grow up and make bad decisions, that's on them, not you. The bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, everybody has free moral agency. We all do. Brother Jordan gets up and other preachers get up and they talk about the free moral agency of man. What does that mean? It means God doesn't make you do something. It's your choice. It's your decision. But just as you have free moral agency to make your own choices and decisions, so do our children. They have free moral agency too. In Luke the 15th chapter, in that story Jesus told about the young boy who said, I want my share of the inheritance, and his dad gives in, and the boy takes off, and you know that story. Think about the dad. Did the dad go chasing after his son? First of all, did the dad know his son was headstrong and probably going to make a big mistake? Yeah, I'm sure he did. But did the dad chase after his son? The dad never left home. Which, by the way, is a key component of the story, because later when the son hits rock bottom and the text says he comes to his senses and he starts thinking about home and eventually he comes home, I've always wondered what would have happened had he not had a home to come home to. And that's the message of the story. One of them. But the dad didn't chase after the son. Did he care about his son? Why, sure. Did he pray for his son that somehow, some way, in God's time, there would come a point in his life that he would come to his senses? I'm sure he did. Did he hope against hope that one day his son would come home? I'm sure he did. But he also understood that his son is going to have to make those choices and make those decisions. And that he'd have to be okay even if his son wasn't okay. It's the oxygen mask principle. On the flight the other day down here, you know how they go through the buckle your seatbelt, oxygen mask thing, you've seen all of that. But as the flight attendant is making his way back toward the end of the plane and in the row seated across from me, there was a young mom with a baby in her arms. And the flight attendant walked past and happened to see that, and he stopped and he backed up a step and he said, ma'am, just to make sure you understand, in the event of a loss of cabin pressure, we need you to put your mask on first before you take care of your baby. You understand that? And she said, yes, sir. It's that principle. You have to take care of you. Because if you don't take care of you, how can you possibly help anybody else, even your own children? Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. It's not selfishness. In fact, it's the opposite. I have to take care of me. My wife has to take care of her in order that we can be available for our children. Same with you, same with all of us. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, physical and mental and emotional, In this culture in which we live, it takes a tremendous amount of energy to parent teenagers. It just does. And you have to keep enough fuel in your tank. Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. Number 5, write this down. You've got to outpatient them. You have to outpatient them. You tune down the voice volume and turn up the resolve. Teenagers love nothing better than to spin up their parents. And they will do things sometimes to spin you up. And so your job or my job is not to get caught up in their spin cycle. Proverbs 15 and verse 1, here's the solution. A gentle answer turns away wrath. Oh, I don't know, it's probably a couple months ago now. I'm driving down the road, Leah's in the passenger seat, and we were heading somewhere, and I could tell she was just in one of those moods, teenage girl mood. And so I just kind of leave her alone. Okay? And we're driving down the road, and she says, I don't know that there is a God. I don't know that I believe in God. And I said, okay. And kept driving. And she didn't say anything else. And it was silence. And finally she broke the silence and she said, that doesn't make you mad? And I said, no. Doesn't make me mad. Doesn't make me mad at all. So we drive along a little bit more and she says, well, maybe I do believe in God after all. I said, well, that's a good thing, Now, it would have been very easy to just get all worked up and excited about that. And, why you don't believe in God? And you just go into all these wouldn't have done any good given the state of mind that she was in at the moment. Sometimes we have to stay calm and stick to our guns and lower our volume and just outpatient them. But sometimes the spin cycle gets crazy. And when the spin cycle gets crazy and all of the blaming is going on and the ranting is going on and the deflecting is going on and the arguing is going on and the talking in circles is going on, sometimes arguing with an emotionally worked up teenager, I tell you what it's like. Take your car, go to a cul-de-sac and just go round and round and round and round and round as fast as you can. That's kind of what it's like. And at some point you say, I'm not getting anywhere. And so when the spin cycle gets crazy, sometimes what we need to do is just say, I love you too much to stand here and talk to you right now. And walk away and go about your business. We have a saying in our house, and it goes something like this. I have more love for you than you have eye rolls for me. I have more love for you than you have eye rolls for me. Outpatient them. Number 6, pick your battles. You got to pick your battles. Not everything is worth a battle, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you understand that. When we took our adopted kids to the first place we could get them to in the city, in the country where they live, to buy them their first items of new clothing. They'd never had any new clothing before. And I took the boys and we went and bought some jeans. They'd never had new jeans before. And so we bought them some jeans and a couple of shirts and all that sort of thing. And Julie took Leah and they went into another store. And so I had the boys with me and we came out and had their items. And then we waited and finally the ladies came out and they had their items. And she said, Dad, let me show you my new pants, my new jeans. So she pulls them out and I go, what? They got holes in them. That's international style, by the way. I said, you got holes down here in your knees. You can't find jeans without holes in them? She's like, eye roll. I said, listen, when we get to America, we've got this wonderful invention called duct tape. And I'll fix that for you and you won't have to worry about it. Listen, People get sometimes all worried about stuff like that, and I'm not talking about anything immodest but I think back to the styles, Craig. The styles when we were teenagers were crazy. Bell bottoms, platform shoes. When I was in high school, I was 6'4" and weighed 150 pounds. And all my friends had platform shoes, so I decided I need platform shoes. Now I could be 6'6" and 150 pounds. Mr. Coordination. And I look back, I burned every high school yearbook I have because I don't want any of my family, I don't want my kids to ever see my high school yearbooks. You know, the longer hair and the bell bottom, all that silly stuff. Not everything is worth a battle. But I will say this, whatever battles you have to pick, you win them. Whatever battles you do pick, you win them. And number 7, and finally, use your leverage. You have it. Use it. Use your leverage. As long as your children live in your house, as long as your children eat your food and sleep under your roof, you have leverage. In our culture, teenagers are conditioned that everything is a right. They are wrong. There is a big difference between rights and privileges. Driving a car is a privilege. Having a phone is a privilege. Going out with your friends is a privilege. The privacy of your room is a privilege. I knew of a family, the daughter was kind of getting out of control, and she just made the statement, it's my room. I can do anything I want in my room. And the dad, well, he handled it right. He thought to himself, and he said, you know, that room's connected with this house, and I'm paying the mortgage on the whole thing. And so she came home from school the next day, and that dad had taken the door off the hinges, and it was gone. And she just went ballistic, and he said, wait a minute, that's my door. That's my door. I think I'm going to keep my door for a while. That parent understood leverage. He had it. And if that doesn't work, then I'll tell you the other leverage you have, threaten to go to school and eat with them. And that works too. You got leverage, use it. Our children have rights. They do. They have a right to be loved. They have a right to be fed. They have a right to be clothed. They have a right to have a roof over their head. They have a right to be protected. They have a right to be educated. They have rights. But most everything else is a privilege. And as parents, we have to learn the difference. And we have to help our kids learn the difference. Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. I talked with a lady in South Carolina, I think it was South Carolina this afternoon. Her teenage daughter they'd given her a phone, and she had gotten into sexting, and she had gotten into some apps that they had told her that she could not have, and they found them on her phone, and so they took her phone away for a time, and things sort of settled down, and then she got her phone back, and it went right back to what she was doing before, and they took the phone away again, and then they found out that she had been on the school's computer and somehow had gotten access to some things that she shouldn't have done through the school's computer. And she said, we've taken away her phone, and she said, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid if I tell the school what she's been doing at the school, they may suspend her, they may expel her, and I certainly don't want that. And I said, why? Your job as a parent is to hold her accountable. And your job as a parent is to hold that school accountable. And whether or not whatever the school decides to do with that's their business. But your job as a parent is to hold everybody accountable you can. But that's the problem. We're afraid to do that. God give us courage as moms and dads. God give us courage to be the kind of parents that Moses talks about in Deuteronomy 6 that we talked about last night. That Paul talks about in Ephesians 6 and verse 4. That the writer of Proverbs talks about in the whole first 7 chapters. God help us to find the courage to be the moms and the dads that our kids so desperately need. And I will say this, keep your kids connected with other kids their age group who have the parents who have the same goals that you have. If an activity is hosted by somebody here in the church family, and get your kids there. Get them involved in all of that. It's important. And I'll tell you something, you older people, you don't have to have teenagers in your home. My grandmother was in her 80s. Every Sunday night where she lived in Louisville, Kentucky, all the teenagers knew they had a place to go. Every Sunday night they would come to her house. And she would have pizza and all that kind of deal. I said, how do you get all these teenagers to show up at your house? She said, pizza. She said, you have pizza, they'll come. And so she loved having all those teenagers over, and so every Sunday night, there'd be 20 of them, I guess, at her house. So you don't have to have teenagers to affect their lives. And then role model the example. Our kids need to see role models in their parents, in other people that they admire, other people they look up to, in the shepherds, in Bible class teachers, whomever it is. We teach not only by telling, but we teach by showing, by walking the talk, not just talking it. May God help us, please help us, in this culture of disrespect, to take the faith that we talk about, that we have, and to take it home and to live it out in our daily lives, no matter how hard as it may be sometimes. We sing the song of invitation tonight. If you're not a child of God, become a Christian. Please become a Christian. And I'll say this, if you're old enough to be a teenager, you need to think about your responsibility before God. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. It's that important. Can we help you tonight and render obedience to the gospel? Won't you come while we stand and sing?